bang the gong. All right, let's go. Good afternoon. I didn't mean to scream at everyone. I would like to welcome you all and call this meeting to order of the Oldham County Board of Education. It is June 28th, 2021, and we are at the Arvin Education Center. The first item of business is to approve the agenda. Superintendent, any corrections or additions?
We do have a couple of amended minutes that we're going to place on the board tonight for approval. The agenda item is number 6, and it's the meeting from May 11, 2021. Item 4, the exemption cited in the motion to go to executive session should read KRS 61.810, parentheses 1, subsection F, rather than subsection C. Again, on May 18, 2021 meeting minutes, item 3, the exception cited in the motion to go into executive session should read KRS 61.810, paragraph 1, subsection F, rather than subsection C. And also, we're going to approve amended minutes for the April 19th board meeting with the following change. The exemption cited in the motion to go into executive session should read KRS 61.810, parentheses 1, subsection F, rather than subsection C.
Thank you, Superintendent. So, having heard that, board members, can I have a motion to go to approve the agenda, please? Motion made by Mr. Dodson, seconded by Mr. Woosley. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. Superintendent, let's go straight to our instructional session, sir.
All right, so tonight, Michelle Shelton was not able to be with us. She was traveling with work and got hung in a travel conflict and could not Zoom in. So I will be doing the instructional session tonight. So not a whole lot of pretty graphics. In fact, just a Word document that I've passed out to you guys. So I'm just going to kind of read this if that's all right, because that way I don't mistake. Before we begin with recommendations, let me reflect on the why of the Inclusion Coalition. Several years ago, we had an unfortunate graffiti incident involving an African-American administrator. That coincided with our schools working with the Center for School Safety's hosting courageous conversations with many of our school staff that discussed racism. Coupled with that was some prior anti-Semitic graffiti at a different school. We looked at our assessment and discipline data and saw that we were disproportionate in regards to some subgroups. At this time, we decided we need to delve into diversity, equity, and inclusion work for the betterment of all our students and staff. The goal of the work is to ensure that all of our students and staff feel a sense of belonging and respect, and that we treat one another with kindness to ensure that we all feel welcome and a part of Oldham County Schools. There were 3 subcommittees working throughout the year. They were the employee experience, student achievement, and student discipline. Much of this work has been preliminary in nature as we look into core issues and possible solutions. We do now have a chunk on our website where we have some of the inclusion stuff. And I give you the website there and see the work as it progresses. We have discussed the work of the coalition with the board throughout the course of the year. I think we've done at least 1 to 2 instructional sessions on this in the last 2 years. This report just serves as a bit of the summary, which was above, and then some recommendations from our DI consultant as far as moving forward. The recommendations fall into 3 categories: Inclusion Coalition structure and membership, subcommittee scope and authority, and communication strategy. And so you'll note on the document that I've given you, under structure and membership, there are 3 things that and these are recommendations for the incoming superintendent in discussion with the board and with the Inclusion Coalition to decide if they want to do or not. Add a site support component. This would look like a liaison between the Inclusion Coalition and the schools so that schools are aware of the work of the Inclusion Coalition. Setting some term limits for members and rotating so there's always some new with the old. This can help with employee engagement as more that are interested in this work can engage, as well as help the coalition grow. And then add the HR director of the coalition as a permanent member. As you know, one of the things we've been talking about is a diverse staff. We struggle with hiring diverse. And we need to have a lot of teachers. The teaching profession, as we paid attention to graduation, we only had 3 students that walked across the stage that said they were going into education. That's down a lot from what they've used to say. And we are seeing that in our College of Ed, so we've got to figure out how to get some non-traditional educators into the field. Also adding 2 different principals, 2 added teachers, if not this year, then the next year following. and then eventually looking to add parents and businesses and community members. The subcommittee's scope and authority asks for clarification from the new superintendent about expectations surrounding diversity, inclusion, and equity work. Develop a new statement to go along with our anti-racism letter focused on DEI work, and then add some accountability to the goals of the DEI work once schools are more equipped to do this work. And then the communication strategy, provide clear communication around what the expectations around DEI work will be at the beginning of the year, set the vision, and follow up with the end of the year summation, some form of quarterly report to the board to keep all informed, and having a member of the coalition, not necessarily the superintendent, to serve as the liaison between the Inclusion Coalition and the board, who can give monthly or bi-monthly reports to the board. The Inclusion Coalition was built to survive the loss of any one member. We've had some folks have to step off, we've had some folks step in, and obviously I am retiring. The work of the coalition can and should move forward, but will need the continued support of the new superintendent and the Board of Education. So it's been a labor of love because, once again, if you look back at that goal, I've often used the analogy, and I'll use it again, seeing I've got a full house here. I often think of the preschool classroom when I see children of all shapes, kinds, abilities, and they all get along and they all love each other. And somehow that changes. And so I can't do much for society in general, it doesn't seem like, but we'd like to make our schools a safe spot. We'd like to make our schools a place where everybody feels valued, loved, and respected, and that by doing so, hopefully, once students feel that way, that reduces any barriers they may have. I often said when I was teaching, if you can't reach them, you cannot teach them. And hopefully by that time, we reduce those barriers and we're able to make the progress for all students in Oldham County a great experience.
Nice summary. Thank you, Superintendent. And I appreciate your last few remarks to summarize the work that's been going on for 2 years. Let me ask, since this is an instructional session, if board members have any questions or comments. Questions, comments?
You know, this seems like a simple process, and it really is, because I was raised to treat others like you want to be treated, and that's all this is about. Everybody treated the same so they can enjoy life and go on with life. So it's a good move, and we can change some mindsets on how treating other people. I think it's going to work.
Thank you, Mr. Dodson. Any other comments? Mr. Woosley?
I just want to say the last paragraph, the last sentence of the first paragraph, which reads, "The goal of the work is to ensure that all of our students and staff feel a sense of belonging and respect, and that we treat one another with kindness to ensure that all feel welcome and a part of Oldham County Schools," is really what we're all about. And in the kindness capital of the state and of the country, we should be leading this. This isn't critical race theory. This is having our schools look like our community, and that's what's important here.
Thank you, Mr. Woosley. Other questions or comments, board members? Anything to add, Superintendent?
No, just that it is a work in progress. Obviously, you throw 2 years in there, you have to mention COVID. You know, timing has been everything, and sometimes there's been messages that the timing wasn't great with what was going on in society around us. Can't do anything about that, but it is important work. To me, it's on the same par as far as reading, writing, and or literacy, numeracy, and critical thinking. We've got to learn how to get along, and if we can learn to get along, we can do everything under the sun.
Yes, I appreciate that. We've had a little bit of discussion about the terminology, which I believe has caused some consternation. By calling our project diversity and inclusion, I think sometimes people's hackles go up a little bit. And I would prefer that we all think about this as the kindness campaign. And really, it is about teaching our students to respect each other and to be kind to everybody. So I got to ask the audience to please hold their remarks. This is not a give and take right now. Thank you. Ms. Hundley.
Could I just recommend that, I know a couple of months ago, a presentation was made to us during the board meeting. Could that YouTube link be added to the inclusion tab on the website so that people can readily get to that and see? Because they did do a presentation that was about an hour long several months ago that I think people have kind of missed that boat on, and maybe if we included that on the tab, it would be easy for people to find it and watch it and get more information.
It's great information. Thank you, Ms. Hundley. All right, we're going to move along with the agenda, and thank you, Superintendent. So the next item of business is our treasurer's report.
All right, Ms. Anderson is in the house to go over the numbers.
Welcome, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. Glad to be here. This is the treasurer's report for the month of May, and we begin on page 1 of our board agenda. Our beginning balance for our cash accounts in total is $55,303,000, and we ended the month with $49,888,000. As you can see on our first line, our governmental funds, we have receipts of $6 million and $12 million in disbursements. That is expected for this time period where we are spending more than we're bringing in because of tax dollars. When June payroll rolls around, we'll have 5 payrolls instead of the normal 2. So we'll continue to see these high expenses.
Hold that thought, Ms. Anderson. I got to ask the audience to please limit their sidebars so that we can hear the presenter. Thank you. Or if you'd like to continue, you could maybe go to the lobby, ladies. Thank you. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you. I did want to bring your attention to the food service funds. We ended this month with $1.869 million, and just to give you kind of a historical perspective because of COVID, last year at this time we were at $1.779 million, and the year before $2.5 million. So there's really been a reduction in what's available on our food service. We continue to provide free lunches and meals to the students. We are getting reimbursed for that, but we are not at the healthy place that we were a year ago, or really 2 years ago at this point. Our daycare is at $1.627 million. Last year, at this time, we were at 1.898, and the year prior, we were at $2.4 million. So there's a almost $800,000 drop in there. We have been very lucky in that much of the payroll currently is being paid by a grant right now. So it's not fully funded, but we're hoping to see some of those balances recoup. And the second section of the report are the bonded construction, and no changes on that. On the following page are the cash balances for each of our funds. And on the following page after that, we have the historical comparisons report. As we look through this, we're almost at the final month of the year, and so we want to be pretty close to budget at this point. So our general fund revenue, we are at 95%. Our general fund salaries and benefits, which is our most expensive area, we are at about 80%. But June, we're going to have 5 payrolls instead of 2 payrolls. So we'll be much closer to our projected amount. As we go through the sections below in the general fund revenue, our biggest shortfall is in this PSC, property franchise tax line item, and we're short $300,000 on that. It appears to be a statewide issue. We're hearing from a number of the other finance officers that they're having troubles with this as well. So at least it's not a very large amount, but there is going to be a shortfall there, I'm expecting. If you go down to the bottom where we have SEEK program, the bottom of this section, you can see that we've got an annual budget of $38.7 million. That was the original budgeted amount that we were given. And we do show that there's a shortfall there, but we have a $2.2 million grant in another fund, and we'll get another $2.7 million next month, so we will meet budget on this. The next 2 sections, we've got building fund revenue. We've got the bulk of our building fund property tax revenue collected at this point, and we will have a final payment in June for the FSPK revenue amount. The capital outlay, all that revenue has been received. On the following page, we have our revenues in detail. If you have any questions on that. And then following that, we have our salaries by or our expenses, by category. The biggest thing to remember in this section is that we do have those SEEK replacement grants, $2.1 million, and that those details are on page 18. Otherwise, there's really nothing unusual on those expenses.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Are there questions or comments, board members? All right, motion to approve the treasurer's report made by Mr. Kehoe and seconded by Ms. Hundley. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. Ms. Anderson, will you walk us through bills and claims, please?
Yeah, let me grab that. I missed that. All right, on page 91, we have bills and claims. This is the activity since your last board meeting. It's 1.771 invoices during this time period and almost $7 million of expenditures. These numbers are both slightly increased over the prior month. And if you turn to the next page, you will see the individual invoices that were paid during this time period. And that concludes bills and claims.
Thank you. Questions or comments, board members? Motion to approve bills and claims made by Mr. Dodson and seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Anderson. All right, board members, we have a few sets of minutes to approve. The first are from the May 24th regular board meeting. Any corrections or additions? Motion to approve, please. Made by Mr. Woosley, seconded by Ms. Hundley. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. We had a special called meeting on June 14th. Questions, comments? Motion to approve, please. Made by Mr. Dodson and seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Thank you all.
If we could at this point go back and then just take a vote on the minutes that we put on.
We had an additional set of minutes that were amended minutes. You're referring to
Yes,
these
the
amended
amended.
minutes, Superintendent, from April 19th. I think you all have this new enclosure. And it just changes the terminology for going into executive session. So
It's just going from subsection,
We
should
don't-
read subsection F rather than subsection C.
we don't have to backtrack and approve those.
Okay.
According to Ann.
Okay.
So we'll just approve this bottom set, which changes the terminology for going into executive session from KRS 61.8101 to subsection F from subsection C, you all. So we need a motion to approve those. Made by Ms. Hundley, seconded by Mr. Woosley. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. Correct, Ms. Corson, we don't need to approve those other minutes that we already approved with the changes?
Yes, you need to, since you did go ahead and approve those May 24th, you need to approve the May 18th and May 11th.
All right, so we're going to back up here a second and approve two other sets of minutes. We did already approve these minutes, but as our general counsel has shared with us, that terminology also changed when we went into executive session. So the minutes from May 11th should have read that we were going into executive session pursuant to KRS 61.8101, subsection F again, rather than subsection C. So can I get a motion to approve those, please? Made by Mr. Kehoe and seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. And the additional meeting minutes from May 18th, 2021, we're going to make the same change going into executive session. Should read pursuant to KRS 61.8101, subsection F, rather than subsection C. Motion to approve those minutes made by Ms. Hundley, seconded by Mr. Woosley. All those in favor? That's 5-0 of us. Thank you, guys. Superintendent, we are ready for your report to the Board of Personnel Actions.
So pretty standard fare for this time of the year. We've got some retirements that are just spilling in, most of those effective July 1st, 2021, and then some last-minute resignations that are effective on June 30th. And then we're in the beginning of the second part of hiring season. Obviously, we start that in February, and then we're filling in holes and gaps at this point. So there's nothing that stands out as abnormal. It's just kind of the flow of the year.
Yes, sir. Questions or comments? All right, thank you, Superintendent. We are ready for the consent agenda, and we have items A through K. Your recommendation, Superintendent.
Approve all consent items as presented with documentation within the board agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda made by Mr. Woosley, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. At this time, the board is going to go into executive session, and I'm going to ask Mr. Woosley if he would read our guidelines considering executive session.
This time I need a motion to go into executive session to discuss the following matters: 3 litigation matters pertaining to student injuries and 1 special education matter. The board needs to go into executive session pursuant to KRS 61.8101 subsection C to discuss litigation preparation, the public disclosure of which would jeopardize the board's position.
Thank you, Mr. Woosley. So may I have a motion to go into executive session made by Ms. Hunley and seconded by Mr. Dodson? All those in favor? And that's 5-0.
You going to read the rules for public expression?
Not yet. We are adjourned until we return from executive session. I would like to remind the audience, at which time there will be an opportunity to sign up to address the board. I would suggest that if you are here in groups, you identify a spokesperson, please, for your group. And we will, Mr. Woosley will read our guidelines governing public expression at that time. But we are adjourned. Thank you, Judge Vogel, and I cannot tell you how great it is to hear that kind of a response when we say the pledge. There is not normal. There's not normally this size of an audience, and we certainly appreciate your participation with that. We are going to proceed, ladies and gentlemen, with the first superintendent report. Before I do that, I want to recognize the fact that this is Mr. Schultz's last official school board meeting with us. We will take another moment a little bit later in the meeting to thank him. But I also would like to recognize and introduce our new superintendent, Dr. Jason Radford is with us. All right, superintendent report number 1, sir.
All right, if Ms. Corson can make her way to the podium. We have 2 policies to talk about today, 6001 school names and 6002 naming school facilities. This is a first reading.
Thank you. Good evening, Miss Courtney Corson.
Good evening. Tonight, we have 2 brand-new policies to review. The policies are new because we haven't had any kind of policy on naming in the past. We've named schools as they came, as they were built. We have one policy that would deal specifically with the name of a school building, so the entirety of the building. And the second policy has to do with naming of parts within a building or attached to a building, like an athletic building or a field or a library, auditorium, that sort of thing. So we are proposing that the school names be limited to geographic areas for elementary schools or features of the geographic area in which they're built in, and for middle and high to follow the system that we've been using, which is to have it be north, south, east, I suppose someday west, I'm not sure. And so that would be for just the whole overall building or campus. I did hear from one board member this month before when the agenda went out, but I'm open to any other comments people have on either of the policies.
Shall I open it for questions at this time or comments, board members? No.
No. I'm sorry, Mr. Keough, I was reading your body language. I thought you were looking. Okay.
And so we will have the next month to take time to really study the policy and the recommendation, Ms. Corson. We appreciate you sharing the first read with us. So.
Okay. So in the next month, if you all want to send any comments, I can compile those and bring them back for next month.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Ann.
And if you just want to stay there, you've got the next 2 anyway.
Oh, all right.
Superintendent report number 2, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say.
I'm
You
off one.
can
I was going
muddle
back.
your way through the
Construction
construction report, or we can invite our facility director.
She had a
Have
hard
at
hat.
it.
She had a hard hat on earlier this week.
Yes, she did. Mr. Bohannon, we're so glad you're here and that Ms. Corson doesn't have to walk us through this.
So am I.
Welcome.
Thank you. Since we last got together, we provide an update for the construction progress. If you, in your packet, page 484 is the start of the report.
Brent.
The major projects that we have under construction right now include updates to Buckner Classroom Addition. The rough grading is complete. The roof canopy installation has started, and since this report's been printed, is actually well underway and almost complete. Plumbing and mechanical finishes continue on the interior of the building. Hydronic system has been flushed. Electrical cabling and finishes continue. Demo and rough ends of the existing art room is complete. If you remember, that will be converted to a standard classroom. And the new art room will be in the addition. Visual display boards have been installed in the existing classrooms, and hydronic pipe circulation installed, heat pumps turned on, and the staff restrooms have been roughed in.
Wow.
The other major renovation project that we have underway is South Oldham High School, which you all had the opportunity to tour with me since we last gathered. But the update on that is the paving at the entryway is complete. The flagpole installation and landscaping. Seat wall has now been completed. Site concrete been completed. Brick cleaning is underway. The pavers in the courtyard have been installed. Electrical wiring, the vestibule installed. Ceilings, lights, flooring, all in the vestibule are complete at this point. And the contractors continue with touch-up in the administrative area. Furniture was delivered last week and installed, and there's a couple items that they are cleaning up on that. So we should be nearing completion, final completion of that here shortly.
Excellent.
And in the interest of time here, if you want to look at page 489 through the rest of the report, is an update on the projects that we have upcoming. Oldham County Art Center roof replacement, partial roof replacement was bid on Thursday. The Oldham County High School foundation repairs, which is phase 2 of the roof replacement project over there, bid on June 23rd. The East Oldham Middle School addition and re-roof bid on the 23rd as well. The South Oldham High School Phase 2 fieldhouse renovations will be bidding on July 14th. The pre-bid meeting on that is next week. South Oldham High School major renovation Phase 3, which includes the fire alarm upgrades for the entirety of the building. The BG1 was approved tonight during the consent agenda. So we will have the construction documents and get the appropriate approvals from KDE for you all for next month on that. And with that, I'll just leave it as if you have any questions, I'll answer it.
Let me ask, questions or comments, board members? The walkthrough at South Oldham High School was outstanding.
Thank you.
That project is fabulous, and we thank you for your due diligence in getting that project completed on time, Mr. Bohannon.
Well, thank you for saying that.
With everything else on your agenda here. Nicely done.
Glad you all got to walk through with me. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all.
Anything to add? Super.
No, just the thought that once again, especially during COVID with all the extra cleaning protocols, the extra work that we tried to get when unfortunately we did not have students in the building, it's been a very stellar year for Mr. Bohannon and the facilities department. They've worked exceptionally hard to get some of the stuff that need to get done, and getting ready for the next round of improvements and buildings as we continue to grow.
Thank you, sir. We are ready now for Superintendent Report number 3, sir.
And now that I'm back on the agenda on the right manner, so that would be Mr. Webb and Mr. Deeves.
I want to welcome you again, Mr. Deeves, and the Director of our Transportation Department is Mr. Jeff Webb. We heard an outstanding report from you all at our work session 2 weeks ago, and I'm looking forward to the audience sharing and hearing this report, so thank you.
Thank you for having us back. So after that report, we took your feedback and ideas and went and looked at financials of what our goals were. And of course, our goals were to continue to provide a safe, timely travel for all students with what I would consider the best transportation department in the state, far none. So we went back and, as we said in our report, we're trying to find small tweaks we can do to try to fix a problem that's been a lingering problem that we keep trying to put little Band-Aids on, and we hope that these next 3 tweaks will help us sustain it for a little bit longer until something changes either in the economy or something else even better than that changes. So the 3 changes that we have decided to put forth you to later in the meeting. The first one is the change that allows us a little bit more flexibility of the length of travel that will go down a road up to a mile. We'll go down and travel and pick up any students on routes that are a mile or longer, and reduce travel to certain stops that are within a mile of the school. Some stops you can't get to school safely even within a half mile or a quarter of a mile, but some we feel like you can get to school safely within a mile, and those are the ones that we are not reimbursed for the state. So we're going to eliminate certain routes that are identified safe passages to school within a mile is our first recommendation. The second one, we like to continue a practice to consolidate more bus stops. We've slowly started to do that, but instead of in certain subdivisions being door-to-door, consolidate some of those routes, which will speed up the route overall by 5 to 10 minutes in some cases, which will then get students to school and then allow, if we do have to do a second run, to speed that second run up to reduce the amount of travel time or waiting at school in both cases.
Excellent.
The third proposal that we're bringing to you is a proposal for a raise for drivers, open route drivers, and open route trainer drivers. In the past, we did a raise about 2 years ago, and we only touched drivers. We didn't touch all of our drivers. And so talking with finance and everybody else, we'd like to propose a $1 raise for all three of those groups, which would be basically $156,000 on the base salary increase and $212,000 increase when you add fringe into that. They felt like safely we could absorb that into the financial situation we're in now. So our hope is those three will help retain the drivers we have now, maybe recruit some. That'll still put us in the top 3 of our surrounding areas, won't put us at the top, but it puts us behind only Bullitt and Shelby County, and of course we always know Jefferson County is out there that we can't, but Bullitt County is at 1667, Shelby's at 1726, and we'd be at 1642.
Yes.
So those are the 3 proposals that you'll be looking at in the next part of the meeting.
Yes, and I'm going to ask board members if they have questions or comments. Mr. Deves and Mr. Webb, those 2 districts that you mentioned that are ahead of us in terms of the hourly wage, are they experiencing bus driver shortages?
Yes, they are.
And I would say one's probably more significant than us, and one's about on par with us.
All right. And Jefferson County, that pays considerably more than we can pay our drivers, are they experiencing a driver shortage?
Yes.
Thank you. Questions? Mr. Woosley?
Mr. Deves and Mr. Webb, during the work session, you discussed several routes that you wanted to eliminate, especially around LaGrange Elementary and Buckner Elementary. Can you go into more detail about those routes that you want to eliminate?
So we were looking primarily at the areas that are, within close.
Jeff, use the mic, please.
We were looking at areas that were within close walking proximity of LaGrange, not going across any major roads, meaning, 53 or 146. So there's really like a 4 or 5 block area that we can utilize in LaGrange. The other 2 were the Northridge subdivision over by East Oldham and Locust Grove, and then finally Hillcrest over at Goshen. Okay. So those were the 3.
Yeah, there'd be really few, there'd probably be none at Buckner Elementary, just because of how it's surrounded by 393 and 146.
Yes.
And I mentioned during the work session, and I'll state it again, I would not be in support of eliminating any routes. What you're going to do, those kids are not going to walk to school. Those parents are going to end up driving them, and it's going to cause the bus traffic around those buildings to be worse than it is now. So would absolutely never support eliminating a route.
And keep in mind, and I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Woosley, but we talked about some things we can do internally, whether that's opening up the doors a little bit earlier, if we have some other classified staff or certified staff that can do that to help parents do that. The actual design of the routes does not fall on the board, that falls on the transportation department. And have to, these are things that we don't necessarily want to do, but we're in a climate, unfortunately, along with everybody else, it seems like in the state, that we have to do because there's just not enough people taking those jobs. I will remind the board that at the end of the year, LaRue County shut their school system down 3 days early. They had banked time because they did not have enough drivers. Scott County, which is a little bit smaller than us as well, literally sent out memos to parents that said for the next 2 weeks you have to find rides for your children because we do not have enough drivers to run the routes there. And even little Fleming County, which is real tiny, experienced the same problem. So this is one that falls in the area of things that we don't like to do, but things that we have to do to maintain an efficient system of transportation to try to get kids to school as safe as we possibly can. I hate that we have to put the burden on parents. Luckily, we have a lot of parents that do drive and are blessed that have that. Because we didn't, we'd really be in a tough spot.
Mm-hmm. I concur, Superintendent. Other questions or comments, board members? So, and those 2 items, as the superintendent mentioned, the design of the routes and the number of stops, et cetera, really are in your jurisdiction, Mr. Webb and Mr. Deves. And so we trust you understand the situation, and we trust that you will do what's best for our students and our drivers. The only area that we have any jurisdiction will be the salary piece. I fervently wish that we could do more for our drivers. They are a huge component of what we do in Oldham County in order to do schools. And you all have heard me speak to bus drivers to that extent. I have the utmost respect for our transportation department and wish with all my heart that we could do more for our drivers. I would ask the superintendent to speak for a minute on the federal funding issue, because what I think our constituents need to know is that many of the districts that have been able to do stipends and major salary increases have done so with the federal funds that have gone their way. So I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you to speak to that for a minute, Mr. Schultz.
Sure, not a problem. So, as most people may or may not be aware of in the crowd, there are 4 series of relief funds that were sent out by the federal government. 3 of them are called ESSER, and the third one was GEAR, which was the Governor's Emergency Relief. The GEAR figures do not calculate into mine, but it's a similar pattern, so you could kind of get a gist for that. So just to give you an example, we are in size the 10th largest district in the state of Kentucky. We are also considered to be the wealthiest county in the state of Kentucky. And so the way this formula was devised by the federal government, and this goes back the first, Stephanie, do you remember when the first allocation came out as far as timing wise? Was it in the fall or was it after January 1st? I just don't remember. So this started in the fall, and then there's been these chunks of money coming out, and we saw the writing on the wall pretty quickly. But the way this funding calculation, instead of doing it on a per pupil account, in other words, you've got 50 kids, you get X amount per child, they did it based on overall poverty level within the district. Some people I've seen on social media, they're talking about free and reduced lunch. That's not what they're referring to. They're referring to it on the overall poverty level within the district. So with that being said, if you just take a look at some of the districts that are slightly bigger than us and what they've received, let's just take a look at Hardin County. For our baseline, just so you know where we're at, we have approximately 12,000 kids, 12,561 kids. Hardin County has 14,143 kids, which, is not, that huge, more than us. But this is what Hardin County got versus us. Hardin County got $46,451,248. Oldham County got $5,402,143. Now, I don't know if anybody's a math person out there, but that's about $40 million more. Bullitt County, that has approximately the same amount of students as we do, they've got 12,725. They received $23,890,498. Once again, Oldham County received $5,402,143. That number will not change. 5 million, yes. We can look at OVEC districts. This one, wow, this one just wears me out a little bit. So, Henry County. Good Neighbors, Henry County. They have 2,003 students in their district, somewhat small. They received $7,798,138 compared to our 5 million. So it was an inequitable distribution to begin with. And so when you look at what that averages out per pupil, we average about $430 per student that we're receiving from federal funds. And I feel bad because I'm complaining about federal money, $5 million, I should be jumping for joy. So I'm not upset about that, I'm upset about the distribution process. If you look at Jefferson County, just as an example, they received over $6,400 per child. Henry County, $3,893 per child. So this is a very serious issue, and the reason it's a very serious issue, besides this money that's not being distributed right now, because if you're paying attention to Twitter or on the news, Jefferson County at their last board meeting just approved a $5,000 stipend for every one of their employees. $5,000. A couple years ago, we did a $1,000 stipend, a non-recurring stipend for our certified and classified staff, and it was about $2 million. So you can do the math on what that's actually going to cost them. That's in the tens and 20s of millions of dollars that they put out.
Superintendent, how many days were Jefferson County in school last year?
They did not get back into an AB schedule until about April, I do believe. If you look at some other districts as far as what they received. We talked about Bullitt County. They received $1,877 per child versus our $430. And so my fear obviously is this one-time money that has to be sent within 3 years. We have a very good plan that is, we are focusing on recouping student learning loss. That's why we have summer school programs all over the place. We have social emotional learning supports going into next year. We have interventions that we're paying to work with our students, our youngest all the way, well, actually our K through 12 students, but it looks a little different each level. We will always spend money extremely wisely, whether it be your taxpayer money or whether it be the money that we're receiving from the federal government. But there's some crazy money out there. And so I've had conversations with Representative Osborne, email, text conversations, and Representative Nemes and Senator Berg, because my fear going down the pike is that the legislators are going to look at this money and say, well, why do you need more state money? Because you got all this federal money. And when that happens, Oldham County, that's already a SEEK loser. In other words, when we increase taxes, we lose more money to SEEK than what we actually get back in, that there's going to be a shortfall in the state budget. And so as much as, I know we're talking about a raise possibly for the bus drivers tonight after the board will take a vote, as much as I would love to increase salaries for a lot of people because we work exceptionally hard and they are well deserved of that, I am not operating under the same set of rules that, and Mr. Bradford will not be operating under the same rules that everybody else is operating. We just did not get the federal funding. Once again, I feel bad that I'm complaining about getting $5.5 million. That's unusual that I'd be complaining about that, but when you look at the overall scheme of things, that has put us in a precarious light not only now, but down the road. We will be very transparent. We've had several reports to the Board of Education about our spending plan on that money and what we're doing with that money. There'll be updates throughout the course of the year that will then be published. It'll be visible on our website. It does not bode well for our local taxpayers, in all honesty. So I just want to be very clear and transparent with everyone. That's where there's concern for me looking at the overall budget, not now, because we've been very fiscally conservative. Ms. Anderson does a tremendous job in finance. The board has done a great job in our spending. We are one of the few counties that has the 4 nickels for construction, which has been extremely beneficial because as we've grown, we've been able to build schools, maintain schools, have nice facilities. But the rubber's about ready to hit the road on money. And this federal money is not helping our cause. And so, if you know somebody in the federal government, it's a little late, but we've taken it as far as we possibly can take it. And I've asked Representative Osborne, Representative Nemes to talk to Senator McConnell, anybody that we can at the federal level. Somehow this decision was made at the federal government in a dark alley. I don't know how. It does not make any sense to me. I'm a common sense kind of guy, and I would have thought that a per pupil allocation would have made a lot more sense. It would have been very much more justified. It would have been very easy to defend. And we can't go with crazy $5,000 stipends, or in Bullitt County, they're going to a $1,750 stipend for all their staff. We can't do that. And I am telling you, our staff, from starting the school food service, our transportation, our teachers, our custodial staff, our administrative staff, you name it, worked as hard, if not harder than anybody else in the state. And we cannot reward them because we don't have the abilities to do so. So it's a little frustrating. I will grind this axe probably until the time that I am no longer have my wherewithal of my thoughts with me, but it's troubling. So that is just a piece of information that everybody needs to know, especially moving forward, not only on the discussion tonight about if there's a salary increase or not a salary increase, but about those that might be inquiring about teacher raises, those might be inquiring about why are they getting a stipend, why we are not giving a stipend. It's pretty clear that we just did not get the same amount of money, even though it sounds like a lot. In our budget, we spent 2.6 on VLA last year, the virtual learning experience for our students that could not attend school during COVID. And if you talk to many of those parents, they will tell you it was a great experience. And now if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it all over again. I'd make that recommendation. We tried to make this last year the best learning year we possibly could. I think we did so. It will take us some time to recoup any type of loss that there's been, but we are committed to doing so, and we'll do it on a shoestring budget. So, sorry, I will now get off my soapbox.
Thank you, Superintendent. So I will reiterate, the reason I asked the superintendent to share all that information regarding the federal funding is because this board wishes we could do more for our transportation department. But now you understand the reality. I also have challenged the media to represent this information in their media outlets, so that we can also bring some attention to what we all believe is a very inequitable situations. So thank you all. Superintendent, we are ready, sir. We come to the portion of our meeting which is public expression.
One more. We've got to add one more.
Okay. All right, I'm going to ask Vice Chairman Woosley to read the policy governing public expression.
Speakers should register by signing the sign-in sheet upon their arrival to the meeting. The board will call upon speakers in the order in which they're signed in. Speakers shall not exceed the time limit allotted by the board. The board will allocate time based on the number of individuals registered to speak. Public criticism of individual staff members and individual board members is prohibited. Concerns about individual staff performance should be addressed with the staff member directly or his or her immediate supervisor or the board chairperson respectively. Public expression is not a question and answer period. Any questions expressed by the speakers will be noted with directives for appropriate administration to follow up. The board, however, reserves the right to respond when appropriate or necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Woosley. So board members, we have 24 persons wishing to address the board. What's the pleasure of the board regarding time constraints?
25.
3 minutes.
25 persons.
3 minutes.
3 minutes. So our time limit will be 3 minutes. I ask that everybody addressing the board respect that time limit so that everybody will have a chance that wishes to address the board. And unfortunately, we will call time, and Mr. Woosley will help us monitor that. So we're ready, right, board members? All right, and I'm going to apologize right up front about butchering of names, all right?
Madam Chair, could you call the first name and have the second name over on the side so they won't become it'll speed up the process a little bit?
Just please be ready, all right? The first person wishing to speak is Corey Queen. If you'll use the podium, Mr. Queen, and welcome.
Thank you very much. Set my timer so you guys don't have to tell me to shut up. First thing, I'm a parent. I have 4 children in the Oldham County school system, and we moved here from Jefferson County because 2 of my oldest had, they were in an advanced system, and they were teachers and told them we should move out here because of the wonderful school system, and that is something that we have loved living out here since. One of the things I discuss that always has bothered me, and especially this past year, there are 3 things. One is when you see a group of men discussing legislation over women's bodies. Sorry.
I'm having a hard time hearing stuff.
Okay.
And I have very good issues.
All right, I'll start over. All right, so 3 things that I see that always bothers me. One of those this past year is when you always see like a group of men discussing legislation over women's bodies. When you see this past year a group of people in a Zoom meeting discuss whether kids should return to school or people should return to work, because I feel like if you could discuss in a Zoom meeting, that probably is your answer. And the other is a group of people not of color discussing racial issues, because I feel like that's kind of your answer as well. And one of the things is when you all part up representation in schools, and I have 4 biracial, bicultural children, and it's kind of hard to discuss whether we're teaching them all of history when they come home and don't necessarily feel like they're represented in their classes. And I have 2 elementary and 2 high school children. And to me, the issue is if you're only shopping in a small fishbowl and you're missing out on the colors of the entire ocean, you're never going to have that representation in the school system. So if you're never going outside of this wonderful area of Oldham County, you're never going to see the representation in the school system of how they're being taught. So my thing is, why are we not going out amongst Berea College? Why are we not going out at EKU, at Western Kentucky? And I'm not saying we are, this is not an accusation, because I am not criticizing a single person in this building or amongst you all or any of our schools. But let's go out and get those teachers that are qualified, that have those diverse backgrounds to teach our wonderful children that are getting a chance to represent in that education. Secondly, amongst whatever three-letter term we want to use in that, teach those children facts, not narrative. We don't go to math class and tell our math children, don't teach multiplication and division because it's not fair to addition and subtraction. We don't teach our science teachers, don't teach fission because it's unfair to fusion. We teach facts. That's what I want my children to come home and learn. Betsy Ross knitting a flag didn't happen in 1776. It happened in 1792 because Rhode Island didn't become a state until 1790. Those are facts. And I'm done. Thank you guys very much. You guys
Thank you,
have a-
Mr. Queen.
Maybe just a little further away.
Thank you. All right, the second person wishing to speak is Jill McNiven.
His pictures.
It's just the camera.
I'm having a hard time hearing the speaker is all.
I'll touch her.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for listening to me today. This is my personal opinion. I'm a mom. My daughter graduated from South Oldham High last year, and she had a very successful time in Oldham County schools. She's now at Kent State in Ohio. I'm a special education teacher, rank 1, Orton Gillingham tutor. I teach kids with dyslexia, and I've taught private and public schools. So basically what I want to say is I moved here from Ohio 20 years ago to teach special education, teach kids to read and write. So I came from Cleveland, a very diverse city, and I moved here and we love it. I live in Pewee Valley. Over the last couple of decades, we've had a lot of things that have happened in the world, such as Rodney King's Los Angeles beating. We've had Tamir Rice in Cleveland being shot when he was just holding a play gun. We've had Breonna Taylor murdered when she was home sleeping. We also have cell phones. So everything's recorded on cell phones these days. So all this has gone on, and our children have phones. They see things, and they learn things off phones that way. So what I'm here to say is that Elijah Cummings wrote in his book, "Our children are the living messengers we send to a future we will never see." The CRT theory is a 40-year-old social construct. It is embedded in our legal system and in our policies. Over the past 2 decades, CRT has become more prevalent. That's critical race theory. Why? Because we have racially blind policies, zoning, housing, neighborhood discrimination, and things like that. Policies and practices in K through 12 education contribute to persistent racial inequalities in education and advocate for ways to change them so that can be a positive. The thing about all of this is, in my opinion, is we need to think about diversity. If you look around the room, look at the board, look at the teachers, I don't see Asian, Mexican, India, from the country India. I don't see a whole lot of African American leaders in here. And I think when you hire from within, teachers that have graduated from these schools, gone to Kentucky schools for their education, you do lack a little bit of getting the outside world in. And so I think it's a positive thing if you can teach a little bit of the history of racism and educate our kids because they know what's happening. And it's better that we teach the facts than not. The second thing is, since I'm a special education teacher.
Mrs.
Oh, okay, I'll come back next board meeting.
Thank you, audience. All right, Mr. David Vogel. Welcome, Judge Vogel.
All that silence, no clapping, so before I begin, I'd like to say to the group here, I know each person sitting on this dais. I've worked with each of them. I have respect for each of them. They're all friends of mine. I believe they're doing the best thing they are able to do for our community. I trust them. They're good people, and I have a lot of respect for them. I wish the superintendent well and thank you for the time that you have shared in Oldham County and the service you provided to our community and children. I welcome Superintendent Radford. Look forward to working with you and getting to know you. I'm not here to represent any particular group of people, although in some circumstances, I'm the chief servant of 70,000 people in a contiguous area known as Oldham County. You, as well as they, are my stockholders. Tomorrow afternoon, we're going to have a meeting of the Oldham County Fiscal Court, and I have an agenda prepared for that meeting. And I can't say for sure I know exactly how your agenda works, but if 250 people show up at my meeting tomorrow to talk about something on my agenda, they will not be asked to wait till the end of the meeting to make their presentations. They'll speak right after the subject matter that we're trying to discuss. Now, not all of us here agree on everything. I've lived in this county 45 years. There have been one or two or maybe three small racial incidents, I'd call them, not even coming to the attention of the community as a whole, nothing like we see on television. We are a diverse community. I challenge the statement that was just made about us not being a diverse community.
I'm going to have to ask you all to please hold your applause so that we can hear the speaker. And first of all, that's really very rude, but second of all, he also has a time constraint.
Okay, and you just took 20 seconds of it, so don't have.
Thank you.
All right, we have white people here, we have black people, we have Mexican people, we have Chinese people. We have a lot of people in this community. There are no racial incidents that have come to my attention in the 11 years I've been county judge, maybe save one, writing on the wall of a school. But I know people in all these things. People have come here for success and opportunity. Now, the inclusion committee that was created, I think you need a new committee. I agree with what the superintendent said at the beginning. We want all our children to be treated fair, equally, with respect and dignity, given the best opportunity they can in life. But none of us are ever going to be totally equal under all circumstances. God made every one of us different. We all have a color. I'm white, someone else is black, someone else is yellow, brown. Let's treat everybody right. That's what everybody, I think, in our community wants, but the board sets a policy. You may not know what's happening down at on the line, so the principals must make sure that all students are being treated equally and that some are not being criticized for the color God gave them.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vogel. Shanna Pollock. If you can't hear me, I will move on. Shanna Pollock. Is that you, Miss Pollock?
Good evening, Board. The first thing I wanted to do is thank you very much for allowing public discourse. And thank you very much for NTI and everything that you guys went through. All of our educators, I very much appreciate everything that we went through during COVID. Being on the front lines of that was very traumatic. And I did want to say I am a scientist and I'm also an educator. I have a doctorate in education. And one of the things that brought me out to Oldham County, again, I migrated from Southwest Jefferson County for my children to have a better opportunity in Oldham. And I did have a graduate this year from Oldham County High School. I was honestly disappointed in her classes. She was not very included. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, I really hope to see a little bit more LGBTQ, a little bit more people of color, and different ethnicities. And I think that's I think she would have had a better experience. There were some social issues, behavioral issues that were not addressed appropriately, and unfortunately are still ongoing. As for teaching of history, I do agree that we should teach accurate history. And I have to say, I'm a little bit ashamed and embarrassed that I didn't learn about apartheid until my doctoral program. It's appalling that children don't understand what this is. I did not understand apartheid, and I grew up during that. I watched it on TV. I had no idea. No one was able to tell me what it meant. I think that children should have a complete education. They should know Christopher Columbus and what accuracy that was. They should learn apartheid. They should learn what Nelson Mandela stood for. They should know everything, and nothing should be hidden. So, thank you for your time.
Dr. Pollock. Martha Hamilton.
I guess I'll put this down. a little
Yes,
bit.
you may.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Hamilton.
Oh, thank you all so much for this opportunity. Golly, I'm just so humble to be here. I go way back with Oldham County School System. Generationally, grandparents went to OC schools. I am a retired OC teacher started out at Centerfield Elementary. I still am an elementary teacher, so that's why I brought We the Kids. My point here in coming is that I'm a little bit concerned about some of the direction in which our school is going with diversified equity inclusion. The DEI program, when I heard about it, I thought, well, it's Oldham County Schools, and I've worked in the school system, and I know that we have always done a child-by-child model for instruction, and I've just been blessed by that on my own, starting school when I was 5 years old at LaGrange Elementary. My husband, I've been married to him for 40 years. I have 4 children. I'm a grandmother of 10 grandchildren that are 9 years and younger of age, and 3 of which are in the Oldham County system, which I'm very glad for. As a teacher and educator, I believe, just like the gentleman who came up here before me said, teach the facts. And I agree with the young lady, the lady that came up before me about, making sure that things are brought before us that are important in order to help us make wise decisions with the knowledge that we know. And I believe that we have to take into the developmentally appropriate time period in which to do those kind of things. Okay. When it was brought to my attention that DEI was brought into the school system, I started to research it a little bit, and I defended it at first. I thought, well, it's good. We've always been an inclusive school system. From the time that I was a little girl on through. It's nothing new. It's just probably something that we need to express, especially during the times that we've been going through lately and what we have gone through before. I started, like I say, in 1965. I rode the school bus, and there was chaos on the school bus, and it was racial chaos. But you know what? It was addressed, and we made it through school. And when I came back to Oldham County after living away in Atlanta for 13 years and brought my kids back here to graduate, 4 of which graduated from Oldham County High School, I met the girl that had that I had constant discourse with on the bus because of our color of our skin. And it was because I was brought up in a home that expressed love and expressed acceptance and expressed the need that everybody expresses their anger and frustration in different ways, and how to work through that. We work through it. But when I came back, I brought my daughters to LaGrange Elementary to start school there, and the girl that I had discourse with for the first time sat right beside me. And she looked at me, and I looked at her, and I didn't say anything because I didn't quite know what to do. I had a tense stomach. And she said, "Martha, I am not the same." And I said, "Neither am I." And she said, "Will you forgive me?" And I said, "Yes." And that's where it comes from. And I also want to say that after researching DEI, It does come, it is an arm from critical race theory. And I am very concerned about that, and I do not agree with it, and I don't want that taught to my grandchildren.
Thank you,
in
Ms.
high school.
Hamilton. Thank you. Thank you. Scotty Giovanni, and I'm pretty sure I didn't say that correct. Gavoni. It's a hard G. Welcome. I believe we all received an email from you, Mr.
Yes, ma'am, you
Gavoni.
did. Just today, that's why I'm speaking.
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to mention, just like the man in New York, part of the rules, with all due respect, were settled in 1964, U.S. Supreme Court, New York Times versus Sullivan, and the justices noted, this nation is founded on the profound national commitment to principle that public debate should be uninhibited, robust, wide open, and it may well include vehement, caustic, and sometimes unpleasant and sharp attacks on government and public officials. That will be each one of you. That was settled in 1964. Now, on to my email. I sent the email today regarding CRT, and I told you guys I didn't want that. I'm not for it. It's communist. It's derived from communist and Marxist. And for you all to sit up here and want to teach our children that, but you don't want to teach them the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, or anything biblically that the good Lord Jesus Christ taught us, is reprehensible and a disgrace, in my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Gavoni. He is done.
I'm not done. I have 3 minutes. And I only used about a minute of that.
Well, that really is at the chairperson's discretion, Mr. Gavoni?
Absolutely not.
And when you...
Absolutely not. I have 3 minutes, Miss Fletcher.
Carry on, sir.
And you just wasted 20 seconds.
Carry on, sir. But when you start telling me what we teach in our schools, which is not what you are referring to.
No. This is my time, Miss Fletcher, and here's the other thing I wanted to say. When I asked you if, I was told not a single board member supported critical race theory. But are you aware critical race theory also is renamed social inequality? Inclusion, excuse me. DEI, diversity. Our program, you're calling it diversity and inclusion, right? So my advice to you all, be careful going down this road, because as the superintendent said, we are the richest county in Kentucky, and what you're going to do, you're going to cause me and a lot of these other people that can afford to homeschool our kids to withdraw our kids from your school system and homeschool. That's exactly what's going to happen. Now, I'm finished.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to take a stab at this. Your first name is Teresa DeLu. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
I want to thank you for keeping our kids in school as much as possible. Y'all did a great job doing that with all you had to deal with. I only got 3 minutes, so I am a foster mom. I lived in Nolan County pretty much all my adult life. Both of my kids are grown and on their own lives. We have a special needs son that's going through the school system now. And I will let y'all know I have white children and black children, and we were in foster care. We never cared about the color of the children. We never asked. When we picked up our little boy from the hospital to adopt him, we had no idea what color he was. And we raised our children to think that way. The critical race theory, whatever you rename it, it's about race. It's about teaching the kids about race. It's teaching them about color. It's sending us back 50 or 60 years. The only racism I experienced in Oldham County was from 2 employees of the education department, not our children. One I can't mention, I think the rule says I couldn't, it's private anyway. The other one was from an email sent out on September 11th about racism. And then there was words in there about the critical race theory. I didn't know because I haven't heard of it yet. And it mentioned about racism, but it left out a group of children. So it didn't include all children, but it left out a group of children. It was white kids that were left out. And I called and I think I emailed the board too on this. To me, that was racism in itself. And it wasn't from our kids. Our kids are great kids. It's the adults that have the issue, not our children. And to go and separate our children by color or this equity, you mentioned equity. What is equity? It's to take something from someone earned it and got and give it to someone else. We need to teach our kids to do the best they can, the golden rule, and maybe go back to teaching the 10 Commandments because we're not doing a very good job. And I have news for you. You teach this stuff, already talk to people. Our kids are going to be out. I will keep my special needs son home and teach him as best as I can. And I will encourage other parents to do it because this does not need to happen in our great county, in our great schools. And y'all, you need to think about it because us parents aren't going to stand for it. And you will find yourselves out of a job.
All right, thank you. All right, Daniel Summers, please.
Just this a little bit. All right, my name is Dan Summers. I have 8 kids. I've had 5 at the Oldham County High School, go through the Oldham County High School system. I have another child starting kindergarten in Buckner this coming fall. I'm here to express my opinions and how I feel about the DEI, CRT, or what other acronyms you want to give it. I know that you mentioned early on it's not a question and answer session, but I do have 2 questions that I would like you to answer in some regard at some point in the future, whether it be a next meeting or your website. One, I want to understand how critical each of you are with the teachings of DEI and to what level, whether it be you have a strong understanding of it, you have some understanding of it, or little. 2, I want to understand how you particularly feel about it, whether you're strongly for it, if you're neutral, or if you're against it. 2 simple questions. So I would appreciate you responding in that in some form in the next couple of weeks. Personally, you'll know my feelings in a second, but during the civil rights movement, we were strongly taught that we're to judge people based on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. Well, I've heard that, I'm 40-something years old. I've heard that for over 30 years. Diversity, equity, and inclusion focuses succinctly on teaching kids to focus on the differences, physical differences. It teaches kids to focus on whose color is different. Is my skin darker than yours? Am I a boy? Am I a girl? Whatever. I've been a coach of Little League kids. I've been a coach in basketball. I've taught school. I've been a manager at work, managing teams. And when you're trying to bring people together, you don't focus on the things that make them different. You focus on a common goal. We're all Americans. I don't say you're black, you're white, you're male, you're female. You focus on commonalities and common goals. Speaking of goals, you have a standard rating system. You want to work towards excellence. You don't want to lower the goal for folks for different genders, equities, or whatever. That's the reason why my family moved here in 2015 was Oldham County has some of the best schools in the state. But if we lower standards based on gender, based on race, based on whatever, then that's a disservice to everybody involved. It really is. I'm also concerned that DEI, CRT is an indoctrination, right? It's political indoctrination. That's mainly what it is. I've looked online at several of the teachings.
Mr. Summers, that might be your timer because.
Yeah, that was mine.
Our timer
Well,
just went off, sir.
I'll come back again. I'm sorry.
Consider emailing us so we can respond, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Frank Simon. Hello, Dr. Simon. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Frank G. Simon. I'm a taxpayer. I want to speak in terms of promoting taxpayers and honesty. And I believe CRT is a lie. It's put out by communists and the Black Lives Matter and the communists. And if you don't know that, you need to check it out. I'm also opposed to the diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's just another word for the same thing. And it's lies. I'm against lies. I want honesty. And that's all I can say. We need to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic, and not communism in the public schools.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Simon. Lindsay Teichner, Lindsay.
Hi, how are you guys? Thank you all for your service to the community. I know you pretty much serve as volunteers. I know you don't get paid much, so thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schultz, for the years you served us. Mr. Radford, we're happy to have you in Oldham County. I'm an OC grad. I have three in OC schools right now. I actually took my fourth grader out last year because I didn't want her to wear a mask, but she's going back next year. Unless she's going to wear a mask, you'll see me next month. I have one that graduated. I really just want to share my kids' experiences because you all said that CRT is not here and that it's not coming. And I would just argue that it's been here. You all, I know, aren't in the classroom. It's in the classrooms. There's assignments that are absolutely divisive, and I will happy to share those with you, but I have a few instances I would like to share with you. I will not talk about teachers at all, but within certain classes, these things are being taught. This year, my daughter in her English 4 class had to take a hidden bias quiz to see if she was racist. All of the English classes did that. I wasn't happy about that. One of the teachers told the students, "See, we're all a little racist." That was her comment afterwards. Okay, a book they were reading was about police brutality and white privilege. My daughter was allowed to not read that book. We chose something different and appreciated that from the teacher. I don't teach my kids I don't teach my kids to judge by the color of their skin. We support our police, 100%. The students were also, they held a debate and they separated the classroom and they said, if you believe systemic racism exists, move over here. If you don't, move over here. One student on the side that didn't believe it existed voiced why he felt that way, and the teacher said, you believe that way because you're white. I mean, swap out white for black and that sounds real bad. I don't know. But one of the things that concerned me probably more than anything was a chat group that my son was following. I don't know what it was. I'm not social media smart, but they were just a debate outside of the school, right? But these kids are all OC students. And there was one student who stood up and said he didn't think white privilege existed. He supported our police. And they doxed him. They called him racist. And one student told him he needed to go kill himself. So the influence that's coming from this is incredibly negative on our kids outside of school, and we need to take that into consideration. And I would just say, my family lived for 4 years in a third world country, so we know what privilege is like, but we knew it in a sense that we had American privilege. And my kids they had a wonderful experience there, but to come back and have teachers try and tell them that because of the color of our skin, we are in some way set apart and different, it's just, I don't think very fair to them. But thank you guys, appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Teichner. Darcy Lewis. Darcy, correct?
Yes, I'm ready. Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Lewis.
Thank you. So I have 3 kids that have gone to Oldham County schools. And throughout the 8 years that we have been here, they have repeatedly expressed concern about racist, homophobic, transphobic comments they've heard in their classrooms. I heard people say that they aren't hearing this, they've never heard of these problems. I'm telling you, they're not listening to all the people. I want to publicly thank the district for creating the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. The voices that support it might not be the loudest in this room, but the voices of all students are important. Judge Vogel just pointed out that we are a diverse community, and Oldham County is becoming more and more diverse. So thank you for supporting the needs of all of our students.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. Sheila Metcalf. Welcome, Ms. Metcalf.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say, I'm glad that one lady brought up her experience when she was younger. I'm sorry, because this touches my heart deeply. I'm 61 years old. I live in Bullitt County. Let me catch my breath. When I was growing up, we had very few black families in our community where we had them. And I lived probably 1.5, 2 miles from Roby Elementary. And there was a girl, I'm not going to name her name, I just found out not too long ago she's deceased. She was black. And they would pick us up. They lived in Shepherdsville, where we lived a little bit down the road. And every time she'd get on the bus, she would hit me. She'd kick me. She'd call me a white rabbit. She called me every racist name that you could think of. I was 8 years old. And finally, one day, I've always been backwards. I'm not backwards now. And I finally looked up at her and I said, "Why do you treat me that way? I've never done anything to you." She says, "I treat you that way because of what my mom and dad has taught me. It starts at home. Starts at home, not in school. We don't pay our teachers to teach racist comments or racist how to treat other people. It starts at home. And our number one problem is when we took our 10 Commandments and our Bible out of school. That's when it started. But I have something I want to read. I'm not going to make you guess who he is. And before I came here, God showed me this. And I tried to write it down. That's why I had to borrow your glasses, word for word. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Don Lemon, CNN. Okay. This is what he said. Black people, clean up your act. Now, he's black. His partner is white. Studies show the lack of a male role model is an express train right to prison, and the cycle continues. So please, black folks, as I said, if this does not apply to you, then I'm not talking to you. Pay attention to and think about
what has been presented in recent history as exceptional behavior, pay close attention to the hip-hop rap culture that many of you embrace. He's talking to the black community, okay? A culture that glorifies everything I just mentioned: thug and reprehensible behavior. A culture that is making a lot of people rich, just not you. And it's not going to make you rich. Now, I have...
Mrs. Metcalf, I apologize, but your time is up.
Okay.
And thank you for sharing that heartfelt message.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening.
Kim Wheatley.
Hi.
Hi, Ms. Wheatley. Welcome.
Thank you for letting me speak. I just want to implore you all to not, I've heard you talk about your finances, and not use government incentives to indoctrinate children. My grandson is attending Oldham County, and he just finished kindergarten. When I heard about your all's DEI, which is just a disguise for CRT, or as kindness campaign, as the gentleman said earlier, we're not dumb. We see through it. And if you are so blinded by greed that you would indoctrinate young minds to believe that they are either somehow lesser or privileged, when these children are not taught. I did not bring my children up. We do not talk about color. My son does not, they don't refer to color. They're friends by name. They were not taught that way. Most of the people in this room probably would agree that that's how they raise their children. And I mean, it just bothers me that the greed would overtake the well-being of young minds and indoctrinate them. There's the famous line, and I'll close with this: you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig.
Thank you. Rob Mathau? Rob. You know who you are. Welcome.
I feel like we're in the movie Footloose right now. This is just insane. Hi, my name is Rob Matthew, and I'm a 1989 graduate and alumnus of Oldham County High School, South Oldham Middle School, and Crestwood Elementary. I'm the proud parent of a JCPS graduate, Maddie, who is currently a Singletary Scholar at UK. In my time as a public school parent, I've had many occasions to come before the JCPS school board. Been in the middle of angry confrontations over school taxes. I've seen heated discussions on bullying, conditions at schools, and busing, the decades-old issue that drove many people to Oldham County. Here's what I've learned in 13 years as a parent. Board of Education members are not in it for the money. $150 a meeting sounds like a lot until you divide it out over the time you spend answering calls, reading emails, attending seminars, going to school events, and more. You must deal with the emotional toll of not just angry parents, but also assisting the kids who don't have people to speak on their behalf. You know about the homeless, the hungry, the neglected, and the kids whose circumstances make it difficult to get an education or to have a parent come here and speak like the people tonight. So if you're not in it for the money or the glamour of being a school board member, why are you here? I suspect you're here for the same reason I drove 60 miles round trip to be here. You care about kids, public education in Oldham County schools. There used to be a time when that idea didn't seem so controversial or a political hot potato. Oldham County taught me many skills I carried with me, not just through college, but my entire life. Most important among these were critical thinking skills. I was taught the following: review and assess the information you receive for what it does and doesn't tell you. When you research a topic, look for valid sources. Consider the biases of the sources and their expertise. Look for the questions you don't see being answered and find those answers. And don't get distracted by hype, hyperbole, and false outrage. This is something that appears to be lost on many adults today as we witness the clamor that has risen up seemingly overnight about critical race theory and DEI. This hysteria has been fueled by well-funded and coordinated spin artists, Hi, Frank Simon. Outrage networks masquerading as news and false information.
Oh, please.
This is my time.
Really?
Critical race theory is not a specific set of definitions, teachings, or facts. It is an academic concept that racism is not just something that we as individuals feel toward others, but something that is
Hold
built
on,
into...
Mr. Matthew, I'm going to call
you.
time. If you all can't be respectful to this speaker, I'm going to ask you to leave.
Keep it up, come on.
Okay, Mr. Matthew, you can try again.
Okay. Critical race theory is not the same as teaching about diversity. Critical race theory is not a part of K through 12 curriculums. It is also not something that says all white people are racist or that kids should hate themselves for being white. There is zero reason why this should be a controversial concept. You cannot talk about the Constitution, U.S. history, current events, or even literature without talking about the role race played in slavery, land ownership, voting rights, education, and the events of today. Talking about race and racism is not going to divide us. If anything, hearing voices and perceptions outside of our own and taking the time to listen to them brings us closer and helps us develop a sense of empathy. In a county that is 94% white, the voices of those who do not look like you and are often lost or discounted even by the best of us.
Thank you, Mr. Matthew.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have to terminate this portion of the school board meeting if we can't respect each other. And, excuse me, sir, I'm going to also ask our security officers to pay attention, and if we have any more hecklers, we need to escort them to the lobby, please. There were several instances on the first sheet of public expression that I let those speakers go over so they could finish their train of thought. I extended the same courtesy to Mr. Matthew. That's the board's prerogative, so please don't yell time from the audience.
Really? They interrupted him. Here's the next one.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move along. Pam Craddock. Pam Craddock. Ms. Craddock, would you please begin?
Sure.
Thank you.
Wow, I get to follow that. So both my boys graduated from Oldham County Schools. I have 2 grandbabies getting ready to start in about 3 or 4 years. But I'm here as a taxpayer. That's what I'm interested in. So, Mr. Schultz, you mentioned in the beginning when you were talking about the consultancy with the inclusion and diversity, you mentioned that it was because of a couple of instances regarding graffiti. And it appeared to me, and that was kind of you moved on, so I got left with more questions than answers. So my main question there is, what kind of an overreaction did we do? Did we overreact because were the perpetrators caught? But that's not really even to say that, that we didn't overreact. We just don't know, right? But now we're paying thousands of dollars for a consultancy, which I think if it's going to end soon, and it's going to be renegotiated, I would ask one thing, and I think everybody in this room would be on board with this. Could we not consider a second alternative and look at both sides? The Woodson Institute has what they call the 1776 Unites curricula. It's an effort to demonstrate the other side of that critical race theory story. And I think it would be helpful if this board and the schools themselves took a more inclusive response to this issue, because this is nuts. It's tearing our county apart. And if we don't get our hands around this and get it together, we're going to have a mess. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Craddock. Miss Darlene Monroe. Welcome, Miss Monroe.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to just kind of give you a little bit of background. I grew up in California, and the reason that my family moved here to Kentucky was because it was happening right in the thick of the Rodney King verdict. Matter of fact, it was people pulling people right out of cars in traffic lights and beating them and looting and burning businesses down, and it was happening 2 miles from where we lived. My dad's side of the family lived here in Kentucky, and we made the decision to move across the country. And it was the best decision my family ever made. The reason that I feel that way is because I was a face that was the only white one in the neighborhood that I lived in. My entire community was Hispanic or Asian, and I was the only white person there. But guess what? Nobody cared that I was white. I didn't care that my best friend was from Argentina and Guatemala. They were my people. They embraced me, and they always made sure that they had my back. Yes, there were people there that had problems, but the school addressed it, and that was okay. Families have to have a presence in children's lives, and I really feel like it's our mission, all of us together, to make the right decision for these kids. I know that you're here because you want to be, not because someone's making you, and I feel like this is really a fight that's happening across the country. The pressure to conform to all of these radical ideas are strong. And I feel like it's our responsibility to stand up and push back for what's right. I don't want my children to worry about what the faces, the colors of the faces are of who they work with or where they go to school. I don't. Growing up in California, I was the minority. My husband grew up near the Navajo Indian Reservation. His stepdad is a full-blooded Navajo Indian, and the Indians would spit in his food when he was a kid because he was white, and they didn't think that their parents should be married. I understand racism. I understand the need to want to be accepted, no matter what your background. But at the same time, I feel like it's the school's responsibility to make sure that the children are learning math, science, social studies, teach them history, the real history of what's happening, like 9/11, that's going to be in the books. What's happening all over the summer here in Louisville and all across the country, the pandemic, all of these things are going to be a part of history. But if we can't separate those things, let the families raise the children with morals and values so that they can grow up and know that. My dad was a racist. You know why? He was the only white face at his school, and all of the black boys jumped him, and they beat him up every day after school. And then I went to school, and there was a friend that I had on my tennis team. She was black. She called to talk to me, and my dad said, "Who is this girl? Is she black?" And I said, "Yeah, what about it?" And he's like, "You can't trust them." That was his life experience. It doesn't mean that it's real.
Thank you, Miss Monroe. Thank you. Hayden Robertson.
So, hello, my name's Hayden.
Good evening.
Is this the mic? Oh, there we go. All right, so, there's a lot of people with a lot of nerve to come up here and say that critical race theory isn't in the school when they aren't in the school. Okay, when I'm in the school, and I've been told numerous amounts of times I can't contribute to a BLM discussion because I'm white and I don't have proper input because that's too racist for me to talk to it. So there was one time in history, if y'all have been taught, where someone took over the school system, implemented their own CRT. That was Nazi Germany, and that was Hitler, right? And do we all know what happened there? The Hitler Youth, they blindly followed this man into battle for something they didn't know. I'm going to have a family one day. I want to have kids, and I want to have grandkids, and I don't want my kids growing up in a society where they're taught to blindly follow someone whether they know it be right or wrong. Right? It's not right. It's unjust. And that's not what America was founded on. America was founded on equality, freedom, and God. Or this is God's country. This ain't your country to decide what we learn. I can choose what I want to learn or not. It's like capitalism and communism. We're taught both sides. I know capitalism to be right, but they give you the choice to choose. So why aren't I given the choice to choose between BLM and CRT and whatever these new names are and Republican ways? Why do I have to feel and be taught one way? It's not right. It's unjust. This is God's country, and we should get back. I'm too young. The Bible is never in school for me. But I believe the Bible should be in school, the Ten Commandments. I believe we should be taught that way, and this is God's country, and I think we should keep it that way.
Thank you, Hayden. Debbie Neal Pate. Welcome, Ms. Pate.
Thank you. I'm a little thrown off as to this comment, but I do want to just mention it because you will have a whole summer to maybe get it together. I know that you all are the ones that decide about the schools and where they go and the traffic patterns. But if you all live anywhere near here, you cannot get out of this road for 20 minutes while those kids are getting out. And if you're unlucky enough to be on 146 trying to get anywhere, when the grade school is getting out, then they stop up 146, and I've seen 3 accidents there. It's the state road. The magistrates say they can't do anything. You're the school board. You're the problem. You're the one that got this school, all 3 schools. My kids used to do their science projects out where that Buckner Elementary is. We need to be aware of what we're doing and what we're doing to the community. People are moving out here for the schools, but we've been here for a while, so we'd like to have that done. And I hate to bring this up, but with the critical race theory, I'm applaud all these people to come here and let you all know how they feel, because that's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pate. Micah Kane. Welcome, Mr. Kane.
Thank you, and thank you all for having a public comment section. I appreciate your all's time. Thank you for everybody coming here today. My words kind of mirror a lot of what Judge Vogel said. I wrote down some names, Mr. Summers, and I'm sorry, lady in the green there, spot on. I have my oldest son is starting 3rd grade at Locust Grove. By the way, I love Locust Grove. The teachers there are amazing. Every time we've been there, we feel so welcome, and my son loves it there. I think I agree with points that are being made about that American history needs to be taught to children. I agree. I think the entirety of American history needs to be taught to children, the good, the bad, the ugly. I think that's the only way they're going to learn from history and not be doomed to repeat it. I think transparency, will really help this situation. I think if parents can see exactly what is being taught to children and what age range they're being taught, I think it will help this discussion move forward. I think otherwise, if you don't have that transparency, you get into situations like you were talking about where you hear about, and I'm not saying this is hearsay, but you hear about these things from your children and you go, what? And so, I don't want my kids to be taught those kind of things. I think, if it is things like golden rule, treat other people the way you want to be treated, be kind to each other, no matter what people look like, absolutely 100% on board with that. But if it gets into other things, then we're going to have problems. And so I think it is ultimately the parents' responsibility, and it's a huge one, to teach these things to their children. And not the school's responsibility. But that being said, I think transparency and allowing Oldham County parents to see the material that's being taught to the children in this regard is going to ultimately solve a lot of this. So thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. Christine Burton.
Hi.
Welcome, Ms. Burton. Welcome.
I want to thank every one of you for all of your hard work and what you do for our community. I have 2 children that have graduated from Oldham County High Schools, very proud of them, very happy with the education that they received. And I am not a good public speaker, so just bear with me. I'm going to kind of look at my notes here.
No worries.
This critical race theory, I know that you're not calling it critical race theory, it's called DEI. I think it would be very important for us, like Jesse said, or no, I'm sorry, what's your brother's name? Mr. Kane said, you know, transparency is very important to us parents. We want to know what's being said, you know, how it's being presented, because a lot of us parents are not, you know, bringing up children that are racist. You know, I really have a problem with the narrative that I'm, you know, just because I'm white, that I'm considered a racist. And I think that's kind of the narrative that's being presented in a lot of public places and a lot of things. So if please, we could bring the program and the content to have it accessible to the parents and find out this information. Exactly what she said and what Judge Fogel said. Very proactive in my community. I want to know what's going on. I believe that equal and kind treatment of all students is very important, and I don't believe any child should be divided or treated as though they're less of a human being because skin color or any situation. I have a special needs child. You know, I've seen divisiveness. You know, I know how that is and how it's presented in the community and in the schools. And I've been very pleased, like I said, with how my children were taught. I think that's pretty much all I want to say. I just thank you again for everything.
Thank you, Ms. Burton. Thank you. Rebecca Bonas. Rebecca Bonas. Close enough. You have permission to pronounce my name any way you like, Rebecca. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I agree with the last few speakers. I think if you could be more transparent, I think about, you know, the curriculum that's out there for the DEI, the CRT, whatever we want to call it. I think you would probably, it would probably help the conversation a lot better. I have not timed myself, so let's see if I can get to this in 3 minutes. We live in a country that was founded on the belief of self-governance, and that a government that is allowed to grow too large will eventually become so powerful that individual rights will be trampled upon. We are seeing the effects of this now more than ever. The public school system is the educational arm of the government. Many of us have tolerated from our government more than we should have, and for that, we the people should take responsibility, and many of us are here today to do just this. The purpose of the public school systems is to provide literacy on reading, writing, and arithmetic, and we're seeing that the public school systems cannot meet even its base objectives consistently. I'm not speaking necessarily just about Oldham County. I'm not here to debate CRT. Everything that I've read about it goes against every shared American principle. And those of us with common sense and just a slight understanding of history, sorry, I hate speaking in front of people, recognizes that it is pushing an ideology that this country has been fighting since our founding. We are all created equally and should be treated equally, period. We are not born oppressed nor born oppressors, and any suggestion of this is destructive and cannot have good intent. CRT is divisive, not unifying. It is regressive, not progressive. Many of us recognize that it is racism repackaged in an attempt to fool people into believing that it's not racism. Morality is taught by the family and the religious institutions that we, the people, individually choose, not by a government-mandated program. Any ideology that cannot be criticized is un-American and has no place in our public school systems. Parents, grandparents, and other caregivers. Somewhere along the lines, too many of us lost focus of what the American dream means. The American dream wasn't supposed to mean an expensive house, 2 new overpriced cars in the driveway, and buying clothing with labels of supposed American companies that have shipped our jobs to other countries to be made by people that are in some cases modern-day slaves. Make sure that the values that you want your children to learn are modeled by you at home. Secondly, we must not forget that we have the power. The power has always been ours, and together we all have that power. If the government school systems are failing our children, it is our responsibility as parents to step in.
As the end of our lives, it is us that are responsible to leave behind good human beings, and we cannot delegate that responsibility because no one else is going to care about your child's future as much as you. We must do what is necessary and not lose sight of what truly matters. I'm skipping because I know I'm running out of time. To those that actually have any authority in the educational system, speaking generally, not just at you all individually, there is little faith to have in the decision-making capacity of a system that prioritizes children wearing paper face masks designed for adults many times 8 hours a day to supposedly prevent a disease that may or may not be present, while also being told they cannot use a handrail while walking down a flight of stairs at a school.
Miss Bonas, I hate to tell you this, and you are a good public speaker, by the way.
I am terrible, I'm shaking, but...
You are not terrible, and I can't tell that you're shaking, but you are out of time.
I apologize. I just want to say that there is a point in time where there's going to be enough distrust in the public systems and even in our education systems that parents are going to opt out. We will sacrifice for our children.
Thank you, Ms. Bonas. Richard Morris. Mr. Morris, are you here? Richard Morris, come on down.
Announce the next speaker coming down right now. The next speaker.
You want me to announce him?
Standing right over there.
Okay, I actually had a board member suggest that, Mr. Morris. So the next speaker is going to be Mark Wagner. Get ready. All right.
I'm Richard Morris.
Mr. Morris.
So blessed.
Go.
Thank you. And I just realized again that I'm blessed. I don't have to make the decision whether I'm going to put my child in a government school. Okay, down to education part of it. I don't know what is in what they do teach out here because they don't advertise what they taught in school out here. I did read in the New American Magazine a couple of years ago, an article called Craziness in Kids' Classes. And you got to looking at it and it scare you to death, make you sick of what is going on in those classrooms, not in a county over yonder or a state over there. It was nationwide, I'm sorry, nationwide. And I'm wondering what is actually taught here in this school. I have spoke with a couple of teachers, I really don't know, but they did say it's not exactly exceptional in Oldham County, as they said before, and I had a thought on that too. But they said she was beside one of the students and what they were doing, and it was wrong, and she had to look both ways before she bent over and told the child, that's wrong, you can't write it that way, it's wrong. Just don't do it that way because somebody might be watching her. Okay, and talking about the money that goes into the system out here. I saw somebody out front that was loading up U.S. Constitutions, was going to bring them in and pass them out for whatever that's worth. And y'all were talking about money that's been passed around here. And if you read the Constitution, it is absolutely unconstitutional for the federal government to give any money to any state for any educational job. Read it. Nobody was complaining about that. Okay, to get back to education, I spoke about that, and there was a couple of things. I live in a neighborhood over there with several different colored people, if you want to use that terminology, and I don't give a whip what they look like. I just want to know what's in their heart. I'm going to treat them as a neighbor until they prove me wrong. Until they prove me wrong. Okay, a couple other things. We're talking about CRT and whatever you want to call this. Where was this mandated? Where was this started? When and all? Does anybody know? Somebody back here said it was a Marxist movement. Okay. Well, the New American have been talking about this for years in that respect. Why is there even a consideration of whatever you want to call this anywhere in the state of Kentucky? It's communist. What is the purpose of a communist movement anyway? Does anybody know? It is to destroy what they are going after. And it is the United States of America. It is not Kentucky. It's the United States of America. It's been going on for a long time.
Mr. Morris,
Yes.
I apologize,
Yes.
but you are out of time, sir.
That's 3 minutes.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Prepared.
Mr. Wagoner. You were supposed to be ready, Mr. Wagoner. Come on down.
I'm not much of a speaker, but
I bet you are.
But so I'll make this short because most people have said what I wanted to say. Transparency is very important to us, and I appreciate what you all are doing because you certainly don't get paid a lot for what you do. But I think two things I'd like to mention that haven't been mentioned, and one thing is that if you want this kind of crowd, good or bad, and a lot of participation, hold the meetings a little later because 2/3 of the county works in Jefferson County. And it takes a long time when they get off at 5:30 to come up this way.
Thank you.
That's point number one. I think point number two, and I've had similar experience to the young lady in green here, but little shocking little things that happen. I think we need some transparency, what I mentioned a second ago. But I think you could get rid of the DEI if you just did one thing that you already do and then add this to it. You already do the Pledge of Allegiance, which is wonderful. And then if we just right afterwards, someone over the intercom or each of the individual teachers read the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. That we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You wouldn't need that department. All right? Thank you.
Our last person wishing to address the board is Michael Duncan. Mr. Duncan, are you here? Come on down. Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to take a moment to share my thoughts about DEI, and particularly our personal experience that we've had. I'm a relative newcomer to Oldham County, chose to move to Oldham County in 2017 for work, and chose it over other parts of Louisville and other states. And so far, we've been happy with that decision. I've got 4 students, all young girls who are in the program between elementary and high school age, and they've been in and had some experiences. I did want to make a first comment just to say that when it comes to transparency, I think that is a very valid piece of feedback. I think many people here, probably on both sides of the issue, would benefit from having greater definition of the terms and of the actual specifics of the plan, so as not to become outraged about symbols which have a greater potential to cause outrage. But that said, I did want to, I think, share an experience and a red flag. When it comes to what we think about the state of our community here, and ultimately, I think we can all agree, and I think everyone here is here because of how passionate you are about the quality and the future of our children. Right? And along those lines, a community has to be inclusive. On the last day of school this past year, 2 of my students had the opportunity, I'm not going to say the school, but they had the opportunity to choose what sort of art activity they wanted. They made some chalk art on the sidewalk. They had a great time. Okay? Later that day, the art was defaced, both from just water, kids trying to scuff it up, and even writing other, contrary chalk art on top. This is just chalk. It's not a big deal, right? But that was their opportunity, and it was taken from them. They also wore some sort of flag, because it was an exciting time. It's the last day of school, right? And because they chose to wear a flag around their shoulders, they were called slurs, and they had water bottles thrown at them. And the point of what I'm saying is that it doesn't matter what flag it is that they were wearing. What matters is that if we're saying in the mission of the school board that we want this to be an inclusive community, we want to have future taxpayers, future employees, business owners who stay here in the county and choose to because of what they remember from their childhood, we need to do the right thing to make sure that we keep this as inclusive for all students. And by actually reading what it says on the school board website about DEI, it appears that that's a step in the right direction.
Thank you.
And I'd like to see that continue.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Well, this concludes public expression. And we, as we said in our opening remarks, this is not usually a conversation, but I am going to give the superintendent an opportunity to respond to some of your questions and concerns. So thank you for indulging us. Superintendent.
There are a couple of students, I'll still refer to them as students, that I had when I was a teacher that are in the crowd tonight. You know who you are. I would ask that you reflect on how I taught U.S. history. And I taught the facts, the good, the bad, the ugly. No intention to indoctrinate anyone, but to get people informed so that when they became of voting age, that they could make choices based on their own thought. Not on my thought, but their own thought. I know a couple of those people are very successful because I know what they do for a living. We are not asking our teachers to do anything beyond that. In fact, we probably have to revisit that because when I had a conversation with a group of juniors 2 years ago before COVID, what they told me, and this was a leadership group from all 3 schools, here's what they told me. Mr. Schultz, we have people that use the N-word incessantly in the classroom, and teachers do not address it because they don't know how or they are unwilling to do so. They told me, I'll wait. I didn't say anything while y'all were talking. Thank you. They told me that we proclaim as a district to have our students be the best prepared for life outside of high school when they go to college or whatever they choose to do. But they said, you are failing us miserably because there is no diversity within this community. And for the first time when we go to college, we may have a roommate or a classmate or someone else that we run into campus and we really don't know what to do. I asked them at that time, do your teachers talk to you about the way I taught U.S. history? And they said, typically not. Once again, this whole DEI, it is not CRT. Okay, you can have your thoughts, I'll have mine. But I will know that after 32 years experience in teaching as an educator, that we need to prepare our kids for a future that we do not know what it will be. And if we do not teach them to be critical readers, thinkers, and writers, they will probably fail. And yes, ma'am, I've heard that all night. It does start at home. And we've had a great partnership with our families. That's one reason we're a great school district. I will never debate that. But it cannot stop at home. And not everyone has a supportive home life. And not every child will have the same advantages that some of your children might have. I'm not trying to ask our staff to parent any children. I'm asking them to educate them to the best of their abilities so they can function and do whatever they want to do when they graduate from our schools. That doesn't mean that they all need to be doctors, lawyers, or professionals. They could be tradespeople. They could join the military. We want our kids to be successful. That's why DEI, once again, is not CRT. We're not going down that path. There's no reason to. It is a post-high school selected curriculum in colleges. It is not what you are hearing it is, at least in Oldham County. So I'm retiring. I know you're very happy about that, some of you. But I will also tell you that You want the same thing for your kids that I want, them to have every opportunity in this world to be the best version of themselves, to be able to stand on their own and do great things whenever they choose to leave your house. It is not based on, guys, diversity, equity, inclusion is not just based on color, it's based on, we've had people talk about this, anybody. Well, that's another debate for another day. We're not going to go there, but I'm telling you.
Well, we'll be back on your doorstep then, okay?
That's your choice.
Right, it is our choice.
Sure, equity. There's a great picture of equity. There's a wall.
Hold on, Superintendent. Officer?
No, let's go on with the agenda.
No.
This is not going to end well. We're just going with the agenda.
If you all don't want to listen to the superintendent, let me give you the opportunity to leave. You owe the superintendent of the school district a small amount of respect. Thank you. Finish.
I'll give you a visual for equity that I've learned 20 years ago that stands out. There's a fence.
Ma'am, do you want to sit down, please?
There's a fence. Let's call it a 6-foot fence just for a visual. There are 3 students, and I'm talking kids. One student is 6 foot. By standing on his tiptoes, he can see over the wall. The other student is only 4 foot, and the other student must be younger or extremely short. They're only about 3. Equity is providing the supports needed for all those students to be able to see over the fence, because in life, we want them all to be able to participate in whatever event that they're watching. That is equity. That does not mean that I take the tall person and cut off their legs and make them shorter. There is enough to give, and I believe there's the old comment, where there's a will, there's an A. There is enough to give to all of our children to make sure they're all successful. But it doesn't happen in isolation. It only happens when parents understand is that you call it a government school? Yeah, by nature, we are a government school. We receive tax-funded money. We receive money from the state. But once again, in 5 years, and as long as I've known any of these board members, they've done nothing besides try to make decisions that are best for all students. That doesn't make everyone exceptionally happy because everybody might have an agenda or have a different opinion. But I can assure you that the role of this board, the role of my job as a superintendent that Mr. Radford will take over, is to do the best we possibly can for all students. And there's enough to go around for everybody. No one's going to lose when you're asking people to get along, to learn how to deal with other people, to critically think, critically read, critically write. That is a recipe for success, people. And that's all we want. That is all we want for our kids that you want for your kids. So all this stuff that's out there about CRT, I know it's out there. I'm a little bit on social media. I get it. But I also know this whole year has been nothing but divisiveness around a pandemic that I lost 3 people that I know of. I am wearing a mask because I live with an immunocompromised person that received the vaccination but it may not have taken. And I live with someone else that can't get the vaccination. So whereas you might not take this seriously, this is personal to me. It's personal to me because it's our kids. We went to school this year not because I'm a Republican or not because I'm a Democrat, because our kids need schools. And I'm sick and tired, and I'm not going to do it anymore because I'm retiring, listening to people try to politicize about going to school or not going to school. When the situation was right, we were able to do so to the best of our ability. And I thank God to everyone in the school district that busted their hump to make sure it happened.
Just real quick to your example about the wall. In America, let's knock the wall down and CRT and stop dividing our kids.
Whatever.
As an American, there should be no wall.
Why on September 11th did someone leave out the white children and only included the brown and the dark skin?
All right, Mr. Dees, give me a hand here. Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Dees. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Superintendent. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to move along with our agenda, which has a few action items on it. I will give you this opportunity to exit stage left gracefully, or you're welcome to stay for the conclusion of the board meeting. Well, I'll give you just a minute so that we can proceed. And don't forget your effing signs. And don't forget your effing signs.
Sorry if I went off the deep rail there.
I'm really glad you did.
Got rid of my microphone.
You did good. Trying to move along with our agenda, Mr. Deves. Thank you for your help. I'm not sure what the role of the security officers is. Huh? Leaning against the wall in the back.
Move on with the agenda. No, but let's go on.
All right, we have a few action items. Action item L, Superintendent.
This is the second reading of a policy that Ms. Corson shared with you last time on school wellness. She is in the house still. If you have any questions on policy number 9008.
Yes, she is. Are there any additional questions or comments? Your recommendation, sir.
Approve the policy as written with no comments from the board.
All right, motion to approve action item L, please. Made by Mr. Dodson, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. Action item M, sir.
So this is where I got confused a little bit earlier and said Ms. Corson hang out for 3 because she had 3 in a row, so it was action items. This is the renewal of contract for employee physicals and drug screens. We have been using Baptist Health Occupational Medicine for years. They've done a very good job. Their prices are well within what we paid in the past, and so it would be recommended that we continue to use those for this next year.
Are there any questions?
No, I would just ask if you all want to talk, can you please go out because it's hard to hear with everybody still talking. Well, some of it's over here to the right too, so I'm just asking, could you all please, if you want to talk, could you please go outside so we can hear the rest of the meeting?
Judge Vogel.
Could you please?
That includes you, sir.
I wasn't saying anything.
The ladies around you are. Oh. Oh. Excellent. I understand. She would love to chat with you. We're going to move on.
Well, we're not going to call people down at meetings like this, Joyce. It's inappropriate. We're all friends, but this meeting was not handled appropriately. There was lightness made of serious comments here. People tried to express fear about what may be happening in the classroom. I don't think their fears were taken seriously. I think they were minimized. I'm sorry to have to be this because I like all of you and I hope we're still friends. I consider us all friends, but I'm telling you the truth.
Thank you. So your recommendation here, Superintendent? Approve action item M.
Yes,
Motion
thank you.
to
Approve
approve,
action item M. I
please.
lost my track.
Made by Ms. Hundley, seconded by Mr. Kehoe. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. Action item N, sir.
All right, consider the renewal of fleet property, general liability, and workers' compensation insurance contracts. Once again, Jay Hall has done an excellent job with us through years. He continues to sharpen his pencil to give us the best deals possible. There are only a small number of companies that actually write policies for districts. There are 3 in the state, and only 2 actually extended a proposal.
All right. Questions or comments? Your recommendation.
Renew our insurance policies through Insurance Associates for property, general liability, fleet, umbrella, and workers' compensation coverage.
Motion to approve, made by Mr. Kehoe, seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. Action item O, sir.
All right, so we've had some conversation about this over the last several months. Once again, and I hope the drivers understand this, those that are still in the crowd, those that might be watching home, a heartfelt thanks for everything that you've done, just as much as I heartfelt thanks to everyone that's worked so hard throughout this course of the year. We just enacted the MAG study that will go into effect July 1st. Bus drivers were not a part of the MAG study. We went back, we reviewed other districts, and at this point, the only recommendation I have is to increase the regular driver, open route driver, and open route driver trainer salaries by $1 effective July 1st, 2021.
So you've heard the recommendation. Any additional questions or comments? Mr. Woosley.
Does this impact every driver class that you have? I know before we left out a group when we gave a raise, so this is every driver class? Yes. Okay.
So your recommendation?
Approve the recommendation, increase the regular bus driver, open route driver, and open route driver trainer salaries by $1 effective July 1st, 2021.
Motion to approve, please. Made by Ms. Hundley, seconded by Mr. Woosley. All those in favor, and that's 5-0. Board members. Board members, you have two information items at the conclusion of your agenda to review. One is the monthly district energy usage, and the other is the monthly preschool report. And before we adjourn, join me at the podium.
Oh, God. I think my leg died.
So the superintendent doesn't like to draw attention to himself. I'm assuming that those of you that are left in the room with us are respected members of the transportation department. Let me know if you're here.
And if you're not, you'd like to join.
Yes.
All right. Appreciate it.
And again, our heartfelt thanks to you all for the incredible, critical job that you do transporting our students safely. And I wish that we could do more for you. Thank you. So, Mr. Schultz has dodged this bullet all month long, does not like the spotlight on himself, wants to just fade quietly into the sunset and make candles. But we are not going to let him do that. He is retiring after many, many, many years, 32 years in the education field. I want to say to this group, Mr. Schultz is the 5th superintendent that I have worked with. I worked with Dr. Hazelton. I worked with Paul Upchurch, helped hire Paul Upchurch. We worked with Dr. Wells. We hired an interim, and then we hired Greg Schultz. Greg Schultz has done an outstanding job. I don't think under any other superintendent's leadership, perhaps Dr. Radford, should we have another pandemic, will do as well. I don't think we could have done school like we did all year long during a pandemic. And so from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for the privilege of working with you. Your handsome plate. All right, on that happy note, what's your recommendation, Superintendent?
As much as I'd love to hang for a couple more hours, I recommend we adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, made by Ms. Hundley, seconded by Mr. Dodson. All those in favor? And that's 5-0. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Glad you got it right this time.
Yeah.